recount process in 17 provinces, as requested by the presidential candidate Chadian Pres, as supporters are threatening to march on the capital. Mexico has begun vaccinating the over 60s after receiving more than 800,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccine over the weekend. In the framework of the G5 summit this month, Chadian President Idriss Déby announced the deployment of over 1,000 troops to the three borders zone to fight jihadists. Hello, welcome to Front Zones. I'm Ray Gomez from teleSUR Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The plenary of Ecuador's National Electoral Council suspended the session scheduled for this Monday to define the instructions of the recount of votes in 17 provinces as requested by the presidential candidate of the Pachakutik indigenous movement, Chadian Pres. The Electoral Council President, Yana Atamaint, had indicated that the process would be reviewed with the candidate and his technicians. Atamaint commissioned the Director of Electoral Processes, Lucy Pomboza, to prepare a proposal. This document will be key to learn how the recount of 50% of the votes in the corresponding provinces will be carried out. Meanwhile, Pres and his rival Guillermo Lasso, who narrowly beat him to take on Andres Arauz in the second round, have not agreed on the recount process and have both submitted different requests to the Electoral Council. Supporters of Pres, who continues to insist that the electoral fraud prevented him from winning second place in the first round, have threatened to march on the capital, Quito. In Ecuador, the Union for Hope coalition's presidential candidate Andres Arauz reiterated his rejection of this mere campaign against him by the international media. Arauz stressed that the misinformation campaign against him is supported by the government of President Lenin Moreno. The Union for Hope candidate said the move intends to prevent his participation in the second round of the presidential election scheduled for April 11th. He denied the accusations tending to associate him with the Colombian National Liberation Army guerrilla. In Colombia, cargo transport unions began strike action this Monday in at least 8 departments of the country to reject the increase in toll costs. A union representative warned that the 300% increase in the cost of the over 100 road tolls affects the operating cost and competitiveness of the transportation industry. Despite negotiations with the government of Ivan Duque, national authorities claim that they have no influence over departmental and municipal tolls. However, the sector ministry committed itself of liaison with regional governments and trackers in order to promote a positive communication between both parties.
I am accompanying the march of the teachers from the regions who've come here to Bogota. What Decree 882 has caused is a labor massacre of all the regions of 12 departments.
Teachers from different regions of Colombia arrived this Monday in the capital, Bogota, to mobilize in defense of the right to work. At the same time as mobilizations by truck drivers, more than 500 substitute teachers marched in the streets of the Colombian capital to denounce the cancellation of their contracts. Teachers describe the situation as a labor massacre. They are demanding that the right to work be respected at the time when the COVID-19 pandemic is aggravating the economic crisis in the country. This Monday, the Haitian people took to the streets in rejection of the government of Jovenel Moïse and to demand the end of his presidency. Hundreds of citizens took to the main streets and avenues of the country to demand President Moïse's resignation, whose constitutional term in office concluded on February the 7th. Sunday saw protests turned violent with police operation leaving at least 1 dead and several wounded. The government currently has the backing of the United Nations, the Organization of the American States, and the European Union and the Caribbean community. Therefore, Haitians are asking for solidarity of governments across the region to advance in their struggle and recover their sovereignty. The coordinator of the Haitian Democratic Committee in Argentina, Henry Wizardland, assured that the current government of Haiti receives orders from foreign powers and organizations, which in his opinion violates the sovereignty and integrity of the country.
The real government there is the government formed by the co-group. The co-group is a group of ambassadors, of diplomats, representatives of the United Nations Secretariat, the OAS, the European Union, ambassadors of the United States, of Brazil, of Spain, of France, and Canada. They are the ones who pass orders to the current self-willed puppet, their servant, Mr. Jovenel Moise.
Henri Bois-Rollin also called on the peoples of the region to stand in solidarity with Haiti and struggle in defense of sovereignty.
We need the solidarity of our brothers and sisters, especially of the region, and solidarity that is not based on alms, on an attitude of charity, but real solidarity, understanding that the real struggle, the heart of the crisis, the struggle that is developing now, is a struggle for the recovery of our sovereignty, of our right to self-determination. It is a struggle for liberation, or to build a new society.
To echo former Argentinian President Carlos Menem, who passed away on Sunday, concluded the National Congress this Monday, and his body was taken to the Islamic cemetery of San Justo for burial. Public access to view the former president's casket was extended out at 3 p.m. local time. Vice President Cristina Fernandez accompanied Menem's family and friends. A military band was set to honor him at the cemetery. The government declared 3 days of national mourning following the death of a former head of state. In the United States, a winter storm trapping snow and ice sent temperatures plunging across the southern plains, prompting a power emergency in Texas a day after conditions canceled flights and impacted traffic across large parts of the country. Rotating power outages were initiated by the Electric Reliability Council of Texas early Monday morning, meaning thousands went without electricity for short periods as temperatures fell near Dallas and around Houston to about minus 5 degrees. The council described the rotating outages as a last resort to preserve the reliability of the electric system as a whole, adding that utility transmission companies are tasked with determining how to reduce demand on the system. And a similar storm affects several regions of Canada. We'll take a short break now.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Sean todos muy bienvenidos a Vidas. Hay lugares donde el arte se unifica con el orgullo de los pueblos. Y esos lugares están llenos de colores, alegría, pasión, tradiciones, arraigo, valor y entrega.
Real Life, Fridays, only on teleSUR.
We're back. Mexico has begun vaccinating adults over 60 years of age against COVID-19. Stage of the country's immunization plan began after the arrival of more than 800,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine over the weekend. The government reported delays in administering the shots in the northern part of the country due to bad weather that caused power outages. Authorities estimate that by mid-April, around 16 million elderly people will have been vaccinated against the novel coronavirus. Peruvian President Francisco Sagasti announced on Monday that an investigation is underway after it emerged that government officials were secretly vaccinated ahead of health workers.
The all-out battle that we've been doing against the pandemic in Peru has demonstrated that aside from the virus, we had to face an interim problem of some public officers who prioritized their personal interest above the common good. As most Peruvian and angry, as I said yesterday, the process to investigate and sanction the people responsible is already ongoing.
The crime of taking advantage of position could be committed by and only committed by a public officer. The President of the Republic is a public officer, and he might have unlawfully taken advantage of a given circumstance, public goods, or contracts made by the Peruvian state. This is the case.
The Peruvian government extended the total lockdown in 32 provinces of the country. There are a highest risk due to the COVID-19 epidemic. Authorities extend the quarantine for 14 days in order to curb the spread of the virus. During the implementation of the lockdown, authorities will assess the situation and the infection rate in order to decide on whether or not to implement a further extension. The order will be enforced in the cities of Lima and Callao, among others, and includes a curfew from 6 in the evening until 6 in the morning. Colombian President Ivan Duque announced that the first 50,000 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine developed by the U.S. pharmaceutical company Pfizer would arrive in the country this Monday. The president informed that this first batch of doses national vaccination plan will start with health workers. This will be the first shipment of the 1.6 million vaccines that Colombia will receive in the next 3 weeks. And Duque said the vaccination plan against COVID-19 includes the purchase of 10 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine, as many from AstraZeneca and Moderna, 9 million from Johnson, 2.5 million from the Chinese firm Sinovac, and 20 million through the World Health Organization's COVAX initiative. The government of the Dominican Republic has formally launched its COVID-19 vaccination plan. The executive presented the vaccination plan to health associations and later offered details to the population. Vice President Raquel Peña indicated that the plan is ready to be executed for the benefit of the population as soon as the vaccines arrive, as agreed with different pharmaceutical companies and distribution mechanisms. In this regard, President Luis Abinader clarified this Monday that the AstraZeneca vaccine against COVID-19, of which 10 million doses have been acquired, will begin arriving in the country before the end of February.
Dominicans have shown how powerful we are when we unite under the same objective, the same flag. And now a flag and its circumstances give us the opportunity to do so again. Here are gathered representatives of all sectors of Dominican life: public institutions, business people, community leaders, politicians, teachers, NGOs, international agencies, and all the Dominican people. If there's something that absolutely all Dominicans have in common at this time, it is that we want to overcome this health crisis.
The World Health Organization gave emergency use approval to AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccines on Monday, allowing distribution to some of the world's poorest countries to begin.
Today, WHO gave emergency use listing to 2 versions of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, giving the green light for these vaccines to be rolled out globally through COVAX. One of the vaccines is produced by SK Bio in the Republic of Korea, and the other is produced by the Serum Institute of India.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the United Kingdom is aiming for a cautious but a reversible plan to exit its coronavirus lockdown. Meanwhile, the first batch of travelers to the country entered and enforced an expensive new hotel quarantine regime.
Today, the national vaccination programme continues to power past the target we set 6 weeks ago, with more than 15 million people vaccinated across the UK. And once again, I pay tribute to the astonishing efforts of everybody involved: the GPs, the nurses, the volunteers, the army, and the pharmacists like Hardik Desai. And next week I'll be setting out a roadmap saying as much as we possibly can about the route to normality, even though some things are very uncertain. Because we want this lockdown to be the last, and we want progress to be cautious, but also irreversible.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán said on Monday he hoped that more than 2 million people in the country would be vaccinated against the coronavirus by the start of April, after Hungary became the first nation in the European Union to approve the vaccine developed in China.
We cannot stop the virus without vaccines, because it will always come back in new and new waves. Therefore, today our country's most important task is getting as many vaccines as possible, not then, as promised by Brussels, but quickly. That's why we bought the Russian and Chinese vaccines in addition to the ones arriving from the West. According to the agreement with Russia, enough vaccines will be delivered to Hungary to vaccinate 1 million people within 3 months. We have also managed to reach an agreement on Chinese vaccines. We bought enough vaccine from Sinopharm to vaccinate 2.5 million people. This means that there are already 5 effective and safe vaccines licensed in Hungary, which is the key to start mass vaccination.
On Monday, Romania started deploying the AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine. Vaccines were distributed to 180 vaccination centers around the country. 200,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine will be administered. So far, the nation has received 1.1 million COVID-19 vaccine doses. About 700,000 people in the country have been vaccinated with the 1 vaccine dose and more than 400,000 with 2 doses. Romania ranks 3rd in the European Union for doses administered per 100 inhabitants.
First of all, I came to take the vaccine because this is normal from my point of view, although there are mixed opinions on this, even in my own family. But I want us to get rid as fast as possible of this isolation and get our life back on track. There are several studies about the AstraZeneca vaccine. Some show it is a little less efficient maybe. On the other hand, the studies are ongoing, so we can't really say the things are indeed like this. Also, this vaccine is made using the classical method, without modifying the RNA, which some fear has unknown reactions.
We'll take another short break.
Una travesía para descubrirnos. Buscamos conexiones perdidas.
No nos queda otra que luchar, porque no tenemos nada que perder.
Realmente es por todos.
Recorremos el mundo con reportajes teleSUR.
Saturdays, only on teleSUR.
On the sidelines of the G5 Sahel Summit being held in the capital of Chad, has President addressed to be announced the deployment of 1,200 soldiers of the so-called three border zone between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to fight the jihadists. The defense ministers of the G5 Sahel, made up of Chad, Mali, Mauritania, Niger, and Burkina Faso, visited Ngungmi in Niger, near the border with Chad and Mali, where soldiers will be sent to three borders region are currently stationed. The deployment of a Chadian army contingent into the area had already been announced on several occasions, but had never been carried out. The two-day summit, first between the G5 Sahel and France, and then with other international partners, is taking place 1 year after the summit held in Pau, in the southwest of France, which resulted in a military reinforcement in the three border zones and the sending of another 600 French soldiers, bringing the number of French troops in the area to over 5,000. The leaders of 6 sub-Saharan countries and France gathered in Chad on Monday for the opening of the two-day G5 Sahel Summit. The group comprises Burkina Faso, Chad, Mauritania, Mali, Niger, and Mali. Meeting in Chad's capital, N'Djamena, the summit leaders aim to focus their talks on the war against terrorism. They were also set to discuss ways of combating the coronavirus pandemic and boosting the region's economy. The summit was opened by President Idriss Déby of Chad, the incoming holders of the group's rotating presidency. French President Emmanuel Macron took the part via a video conference from Paris.
As we all know, the success of the fight against terrorism is strongly linked to the development actions. Misery and precariousness feed the breeding ground for terrorism and violent radicalism. This pandemic has strongly compromised the immense sacrifices made in the field of security and development in our Sahelian space. This is why we must transcend ourselves to conjure up the evils, overcoming the problems that beset us. The population of the Sahel that live every day under the threat of war and terrorist attack expect from all of us pragmatic actions to improve the security situation on the ground.
The Palestinian Authority accused Israel on Monday of holding up the delivery of COVID vaccines into the occupied Gaza Strip, where Palestinians have yet to receive any doses. Palestinian Authority tried to send 2,000 doses of Russia's Sputnik-V vaccine from the occupied West Bank to Gaza on Monday, but Israel stopped the shipment at the West Bank checkpoint and informed the Palestinians there was no approval to continue to Gaza. The body charged with approving the transfer is Israel's National Security Council, part of the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu government. Palestinian officials say they submitted the transfer request to Israel Defense Authorities soon after receiving an initial shipment of 10,000 Russian doses in the West Bank on February the 4th. Health Minister May Al-Khaila stressed that the doses were for medical staff working in intensive care wards designated for COVID-19 patients and for staff working in emergency departments, but the Israeli occupation authorities prevented their entry. Palestinians and rights groups have accused Israel ignoring its duty as an occupying power by not including the Palestinian populations of the West Bank and Gaza Strip in its inoculation program. A civilian contractor was and others injured after a rocket struck outside the international airport of Erbil, the capital of Iraq's semi-autonomous Kurdish region, on Monday evening, according to a spokesman for the United States-led coalition. Iraqi and Western security sources reported that at least 3 rockets were fired in the direction of the city's airport and near where foreign troops are based. That's part of an international alliance supposedly fighting the Islamic State. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack. The airport was reportedly shut down and flights were halted for safety issues. Demonstrators in Myanmar on Monday sat in protest behind a police barricade on a road leading to the headquarters of the political party led by deposed leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Protesters continued to gather across the country following a night in which authorities cut the country's internet access and increased the security presence in major cities, seeking to curtail demonstrations against the response military takeover. Despite not being able to reach the National League for Democracy Party building in Yangon, demonstrators were not deterred and continued chanting slogans and waving banners behind the blockade demanding the release of the Suu Kyi and the return of the government they say they elected. In Myanmar's capital, protesters gathered outside a police station demanding the release of a group of high school students who were detained while joining in protest activities. The line of riot police, backed by water cannon, drew up nearby. Catalan pro-independence party Esquerra Republicana de Catalunya celebrates after leading the procession block the boost at their parliamentary majority in regional election. The three parties who promote independence from Madrid are set to get 24 seats in 135 seat assembly, with the Esquerra Republicana getting 33 seats, the Junts per Catalunya getting 32, and the Candidatura d'Unitat Popular 9 seats.
Catalunya Més avui ha fet història. Per primera vegada...
Catalonia has made history today. For the first time, independence exceeds 50% of the vote, and this means that this country is beginning a new stage. We have an immense power to achieve amnesty and self-determination, to achieve the freedom of political prisoners and the return of exiles. We have immense power to get the referendum, to get the Catalan Republic.
I would like to send a message to European authorities. The results are clear. We, the pro-independence parties, have a majority. We have reached more than 50% of the popular vote. The Catalan people have spoken. The time has come to negotiate a referendum of self-determination. Please get involved.
And we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for telesur English. I'm Bray Gomez. Thank you for watching.